I think they just want to know like what can you actually do, and then like I'll go into your documentation or I'll go into your demos pretty quickly, right? So don't like waste my time with like sugarcoating what you can do. I think there's this like tendency to be like, oh, like if I don't put many words on a paper or slide or whatever it is on a messaging brief on a web page, like it's not, you know, it's not going to do the job. And I think that was one of the things. Just like no, like be direct.
Hello, everyone. This is Kevin Kerner with Tech Marketing Rewired. I reached out to David Macias because he's a product marketing pro who did some amazing work at his time at companies like Dell and MongoDB. And he even took some time off work to learn Python at one point in his career. So I thought he's the right guy to talk to when it comes to marketing to developers. Right now, a lot of teams are wrestling with AI launches, not the least of which is what's real, what's hype, and how do you tell the story when your buyer is a skeptical engineer. David walked me through how he thinks about AI messaging that earns trust, what developers actually want when they evaluate a tech brand, and a few simple ways to learn what they need fast. He's also taking some time off for his next move, so I had him walk me through why he's taking a purposeful pause and the process he went through to think through the transition. If you're a product marketer or anyone who's trying to message AI to a technical buyer, this one will definitely help. And here at Mighty and True, we do this every day for tech brands. So if you're interested in learning more about Mighty and True, go to our site at www.mightyandtrue.com. Let's get to it. This is Tech Marketing Rewired. David, welcome. How you doing?
Good. How about yourself, Kevin?
Good. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, you too.
We met through the Tech Marketing Rewired dinner that we had here in Austin. So that was a good hookup. So thanks for coming to that.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was great. Great food, drinks, and great conversation. So
Yeah, what I learned about you over the last month or so is that you're an artist. Pretty impressive. Like
that's
the
right. Yeah.
Longhorn there is actually your piece of art. People that can't or listening to the audio can't see that. It's really pretty cool.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. I learned that you're a talented musician as well. So that's cool.
That's right. Yeah, well, yeah, I try. But it's pretty amazing, like for people that you meet that are in the tech world, like you're a marketer and product marketer and you've done all this stuff. And then you're also a painter. Like you do have like this, like people have a creative side or they have stuff that they do outside of their day gig. It's just so interesting to find out all the different things.
Yeah, yeah. And everybody has one. It could
Yeah.
be writing, could be music, art. I've met some who here in Austin, he's like a VP or senior director of product marketing, and he's like a part-time journalist for the Texas Stars. It's the minor league hockey team
That's cool.
up in Cedar Park near Austin. If those people aren't, familiar with the region, but that's his passion is hockey and writing. And so it's a very cool thing he does on the side, but it's related to,
Yeah. What a cool gig too. I
yeah,
love going to
yeah,
those hockey games. They're awesome. So,
yeah.
well, I wanted to get into today. We're going to be talking about kind of the hype between AI and the reality of being a product marketer who's trying to scale, an AI product. You've had some great experience from your background. And then the other thing I really want to get into with you, and I don't think it's talked about enough, is the developer community, because you've been in a company most recently that sells kind of directly to the technical buyer. So I think they get kind of ignored to some degree at sometimes. So it'd be great to get your perspective on that. But before we dig into it, I wanted to give you a chance to just give a little bit about your background, how you got to where you ended up, and then we'll get into some of our discussion here.
Yeah, yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'm David Macias. I'm based in Austin, Texas. Was out in the Bay for 5 years, but spent a lot of my time here in Austin as a two-time alum of UT. I've been doing product marketing for a little over a decade, and started out at Dell. Spent some time at HomeAway, now VRBO, part of Expedia Group. So, if you live in Austin, it's pretty common. You'll meet somebody who's worked at one of those two companies. And then I actually took time off to do a data science boot camp back before I would say the AI hype cycle, back when it was kind of more talked about as data science and machine learning. This was about 6 years ago, did it full time, took time off from product marketing. And, I had marketed some products that had some, ML models powering them. And I just wanted to learn more about what was going on under the hoods. I'd taken a couple coding classes in undergrad as well. So it was a time for me to invest a little bit in myself, uh, you know, gain some technical prowess, both from like a coding perspective and statistics. I also realized, a career in data science wasn't for me. So I was like, it's good to reaffirm, sticking with product marketing was best for me, but it gave me this kind of newfound passion for more, technical products and technical companies. Went to a startup briefly, and then I ended up, one of the products we learned during our data science bootcamp was MongoDB, where I ended up. Uh, to me, one of the great database options, you know, developer data platform, just really a way that's great for, storing the data that applications are built on top of, that can scale, store all kinds of data, really easy for developers to work with. I'm kind of getting to my sales speech already for MongoDB again, but I spent about 5 years there. We grew from about 1,800 folks when I started to almost 6,000 recently. It was really awesome to be a part of that growth. Product marketing team, that was about 8 or 9 when I joined, and I think, in the 30s. And then we had DevRel as a part of our organization, about 50 or 60 by the time I left. Went from an individual contributor to managing a team of 6, and uh, made a really interesting acquisition in the AI space, Voyage AI, one of the leaders in embedding models. And so, yeah, it was just I really enjoyed my time there. It was an inflection point in my career. And I recently, and we can talk about this later, I have decided to take a little bit of an intentional break. My career is a few reasons went into it, but and part of the reason I'm able and lucky enough to do so is just how great MongoDB uh, has that was for me. But yeah, I you know grew a stronger appreciation for the developer, everything that's put on them to build. Right, so many companies are really can live and die by the products, the software, and even not tech first companies, right? You think about banking companies, automotive, whatever, right? They hire developers left and right. And so how do they help create that competitive advantage for their company? So the pressure that's put on them, and also the rate of innovation for everything, all the tools and products they have to use, but then how do they keep up with it while actually doing their job? And then
Mm.
at times dealing with other people's messes for what they're taking out. Just so much. I won't get too much into it right now, but a great appreciation for the job developers have. Um, and yeah, and so being able to talk to so many over the last several years at conferences, over Zooms and customer advisory boards, all that. It's just really interesting, and to see what they're building, how they build it, it's very cool.
That's so interesting that you took time off to educate yourself more on the technical side of things. I did the same thing at some point in my career where I took more of the code side, and it was so helpful because you really don't, it's very difficult to talk to a developer without actually knowing at least the basics of the technical part. So that's really, did you take actual time off work or did you do that while you were working?
No, I took time off.
Yeah, that's
I
great.
did a full-time course. So I was basically coding in Python every day for about 4 months. And then while I was kind of interviewing after that, still almost every day. But yeah, I mean, I did a few data science interviews. So I had like coding projects and all that stuff. And so I experienced what a lot of young developers experience, which is the leak code or hacker rank,
Yeah.
interview where they get interviewed and they're being like watched while they code and get these kind of tough problems. And I did a couple of those. It's pretty, if you feel like doing it as a marketer, doing a case study and presenting that is stressful. Somebody watching you type in code and then seeing if it works or doesn't work. So yeah, it's
Keystroke.
another way to just kind of, empathize with your customer, right?
Yeah, that's gosh, I can't even imagine that because it's hard enough to write code. And you had to, back then, you probably had to do it more manually. Now it's crazy what the code assistants can do for you, but it's a whole different thing. So you saw when you joined Mongo, it was already kind of a ML company to some degree, a database company. And then you saw this acquisition and now you have this AI capability. So you've seen the sort of the AI hype, perhaps. I mean, they built a technical product and it was in production, et cetera. But there's a lot of hype in the marketplace around AI, and now you're still trying to build this production ready application. From your experience as a product marketing leader, can you describe what that gap looks like between the reality of what you're trying to build to the hype that's in the marketplace? What does it look like on the ground as a marketer?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. One that, I would say for the last 2.5, 3 years. I mean, call it arguably anybody who works in tech once OpenAI came out with GPT. Was it fall of was it 2023? Am I mistaken, or 2022? I mean, it just kind of put everybody on blast, right? I would say the interesting thing, MongoDB, we really weren't. We had very little messaging around ML and AI before that. In fact, most of what we did have was kind of through other technical partners. I actually worked on some stuff where it was like MongoDB and Databricks, together. It was just like, you store your data in MongoDB, and then you kind of send it elsewhere to go through different, machine learning or AI models. And, quickly everybody became an AI company, right? And we had some of our competitors, and call it some of the smaller competitors. I mean, MongoDB, right, was already a public company when I joined, but say like 200 to 300 person companies, definitely more startup-y. And their homepages, everybody's homepages became like just like AI washed, like right away, right? And like they were just like an AI company, an AI product. You're like, your product didn't change overnight. Really, what you do didn't change. But we like anyone, you were like, well, you kind of have to, like, to a certain degree, you have to make sure that you don't get passed over. If somebody's looking for an AI ready database or something like that, right? So you still have to do some of it. And just a little anecdote there. I mean, I think it was interesting because there's a lot of these companies that then about a year and a half later, you kind of saw their homepages revert back to kind of what they really were before. I mean, we did too, to a degree. I mean, you still see like AI everywhere, and in the sub nav under products, and in their messaging, it just wasn't necessarily the header, right? It was like the subhead, and it was how did they attach to it. And so I think for us, it was like, well, what is it about us that actually makes us differentiating, and like for people who are trying to build something with AI? Because if you think about the actual AI companies, it's most of them, it's the handful of companies who are actually build, especially in like, I would say AI and kind of like Gen AI, right? Like
Yeah.
OpenAI, Anthropic, obviously Google Gemini, and the other Mistral out of France, and some of the bigger, you know, Meta. But as far as like the models go, I mean, it's like everybody else. It's like, well, what do you do to enable people to build this, right? And what is your differentiating standpoint? And then you kind of start to see like, okay, talking to customers, what are they actually building? Talking to conferences, talking to analysts. But at the end of the day, it's like, how is it that like what differentiated before is like still differentiated in the sense that like, we're a great database, easy to work with. AI adds a layer of complexity. We, you know, we are still make that complexity like easier as a database company. All these things. I think it was one of those things is like, how did you like, and maybe I'm kind of jumbling my words here a little bit, but you know, get back to like what your core value prop is and how it was good for those building with those AI models, and not just say like, hey, we're an AI company now. And maybe it's a little bit different from MongoDB because we are enabling companies to build their AI products. And so, you might think of a Glean or a Harvey, which are some of these kind of newer AI companies. And so we're kind of almost selling to those companies. Now, how do you store your data and use it properly with these AI models? But it's this weird kind of getting caught up in the hype cycle, and just remembering like, what is it that actually differentiates us, what is it that people come to us for, but also realizing like there's a new audience out there too. So it was a lot. And I would say within all of that, there was a lot of, and still happening today, these kind of sub hype cycles. An interesting point, when it first came out, retrieval augmented generation, an acronym RAG, is a way that developers build apps. That was a big way that MongoDB enabled developers to build AI apps, to retrieve data via vector search, to augment one of
Yep.
these AI models with their proprietary data. And very early on, it was like, do we even attach to this phrase? Like, is it just going to go over our customer's head? Like, I don't know. And it was one of those things that we just kind of said, like, I think we just got to like put it out there, see what it is. And within a month or two of enabling some of our sales folks, very quickly we realized like customers started asking us for it. And it was good that we had already started messaging that. And actually, a year and a half, 2 years later, people are saying now, is RAG dead? Are these AI models like, do you need to retrieve your proprietary data through this other, form? And so that's just like a hype that's like, is that cycle already ended? And that's one where it kind of worked out for us. We went in early, but there's all these different things. MCP, If you've heard of
Yep.
Model Context Protocol recently by Anthropic, I had a member on my team. They were like, I heard about this thing called ACP. I read this thing this developer said, and then it was a quick thing where this person on my team had to be like, wait, is that real? I don't know, because I know MCP's new. So I'd say like AI, right? It's kind of here to stay, obviously, but then you have all these sub trends within it, and it's really hard to keep up with those. And which one of those are real? And so you start to say like, all right, who are the authoritative voices in the space, right? Like you got to know that. Who are the authoritative people within your company? Product managers, product owners. And even then, everybody's a little bit susceptible because it might be somebody thinks this way of doing something is the right way, and a few months later, it's not. So you always kind of have to like stay attuned to everything, but it is hard to do that while also doing your day job. So,
That's
um,
fascinating.
yeah.
That's
Anyway,
fascinating.
that was kind of a long
No, no,
rant
no.
about some of these AI hype cycles and sub hype cycles, but yeah.
No, I hadn't actually thought of it that way, but you're right. Like I heard the whole RAG thing at MCP, and agents would be another term. There are so many things you can get, I don't want to say tricked by, but you can sort of start to lean into. And even as a business owner, as an end business owner, you get to be like, oh man, this is like really cool. I better be on this thing. But so I think it's really interesting that as a database company, you also could get caught up in those things on the product side. Is there any way you found to guide yourself through the reality of this is how we should be messaging? Was there a foundation that you always stuck on? I love the idea of going to voices that are trusted in the space. Like that sounds really good. But how do you filter through all that noise? Is it your product team that helps you? Like what did you find to be not get caught up in something that you shouldn't have got caught up in as a marketer?
Yeah, I would say it's speaking to customers and prospects as much as you can. I think this is easier done when you're at a smaller company. You tend to have more access directly to customers or prospects. And I say prospects, it's easy when you're saying like, I went to Google Next earlier this year, and that was an easy way to just have, I don't know, 150 conversations in, a couple days, anywhere from people who are like, basically come to me because they need support on something very like niche within MongoDB, but other people are just like, why are you guys here? What do you guys do? And, that whole spectrum of like experts already in our product or just like need the 2-minute pitch. But also, nowadays it's really easy. Like it's so many companies record their sales calls or their customer success calls,
Yeah.
and it's all AI, all transcribed with AI, summarize all these things. And we worked internally to one basically like send all these transcriptions through AI models, see which calls would be worth listening to. So I had my team of product marketers. We made it a point over about a month and a half to listen to 100 calls across regions, across all customers, prospects, all these things, and just all these questions that we had, our product managers had, other marketers had. So it was anything from kind of trying to like hone in on the personas, hone in on like, what maybe kind of partners or competitors are naturally brought up, all these things that could help all these people. But, one of the things was looking at the summarizations of these transcriptions, which is great. But at the end of the day, I would tell people like actually sit there and like, there's a 5 or 6 minute moment where that customer is explaining their technical architecture and the products they use, their stack. They're basically ultimately their problem, their use case, what they're trying to solve and how we might be a part of it. Like listen to that actively. And I would say the same with like, reading some of the experts out there. It's like you can easily get, a summarized version of it. And we all love the sound bites and stuff. But when you find something that you listen to that sound bite or you see a summarization of an interesting call, like go dive into it deep. And once we all did that and, collated all our findings, it really helped us kind of guide like, yeah, we really do need to talk more about agentic and not just like agents, but for us, it was like, how are we the proper memory provider? Right. And that's what people wanted to know. Like that's where a database would kind of naturally fit in, but that's where we were getting traction. And so it just kind of gives this like, yeah, this isn't just something that we should hold back and see how this, framework for building certain, agent applications plays out. It's like, no, that trend is already starting to come about. And that's how we can like better understand like, what we need to talk about. Yeah. And that's a couple of things. And I think it's sometimes that work can be tedious or like, when you're caught up in Slack and whatever else and Zoom calls all day, or you forget to do it. But it's that dedicated time to, continually learn about the industry and about what's going on through your customers, not just like competitor websites or, what you see on like LinkedIn feeds and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's taking that dedicated time and setting it aside. I would say the same too for even like learning your own product and actually trying to build with it. For
You
me,
had
like,
any of that
I know.
stuff did you
Go
guys
ahead.
get any of that stuff back to the product team in terms of what you were hearing from the actual customer?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I would say a couple outputs. Three of the teams that we would output to mainly were like the product team, our sales enablement team, and our demand generation team as well. Because it was like, all right, demand gen is like kind of the personas, things like that. Do we want to do some webinars that kind of talk about us and a certain competitor, or do anything, or just kind of like what words are really highlighted the most? And for sales enablement, right, they could just take little anecdotes here and there and help with like, you know, some sellers may have not spoken to customers who talk about these things yet, but for them, it's like, oh no, there are conversations after this that they're going to come. I better be ready for when they happen. And then for product, obviously, it's good for them to, they might also have their own bias because they might have a handful of conversations every few weeks, but they don't have the time to go through 100 over the last few months. So yeah,
Interesting. It always goes back to the customer.
yeah,
Like let's just listen to see what the customer, and the customers might also be stuck in somewhat of an echo chamber too. They're hearing all the hype stuff too, but over time, it gets so much easier now with AI to be able to call through the all the conversations that salespeople are having, et cetera. But I was just talking to someone about how I think AI as a marketer, what it should be doing for us is taking all the stuff that we don't want to do that we had to do manually and automating it so we can spend more time on the things that we want to do. And the thing that we should be doing is spending more time with the customer because they're the ones that are actually give us stuff. But I think there is a danger in AI that as maybe newer marketers that they just go to the AI for the answer. They're not using AI to not necessarily get the land answer, but they're not using it to automate to talk to customers. They're just spending all their time in AI. So I think it's really important that you say you got to figure out what the customer is actually saying.
yeah. I think that's a great point, and it happens. I think a good way to kind of have that BS meter too is
Yeah.
ask questions to the different models about your own product or things that you know about, and then if you know you'll see that there's sometimes a little bit inaccurate, and so you're like, all right, well then can I trust it about some of our competitors or
No doubt.
partners even, and so then you have to go to their, I would just say like that's when you kind of have to dive a little bit deeper and go to the sources it brings up, go to your actual competitors' documentation. Not fun stuff to read, but I think in this day and age, like when you can get the quick and dirty very easily, what's going to differentiate you as a marketer is spending that little bit of extra time or finding something that gives that kind of edge, whether it's like a little bit of knowledge, help you advocate for something internally, or just make your messaging and your marketing just a little bit better.
100%. Now, you're also messaging to a developer community, and what I know about developers is they can be quite skeptical. They want to be in community, but they want to be in a community that knows what they're talking about. Um, they sort of smell the marketing hype really easily, and they're willing to tell you that it's marketing hype. Like they're very vocal bunch if they see something they don't like. So what have you found messaging to the developer community that's most important to keep in mind? And what's worked for you, especially given that your product was so technical and it also had an AI component to it?
Yeah, there's a few elements there. I would start with one with like at least for like kind of the more kind of top level messaging and marketing. I would say like, and most technical companies like MongoDB will have like a developer advocacy team or developer relations team who might write some of the more the like very technical stuff, and they themselves tend to be actual developers. I'd say at the high level, it's just less is more. And what I mean by that, it's like it's on a couple levels. Like less is more and being that like just be direct, like and two, like really gotta like cut out the fluff and all the marketing speak, right? And I know that's like hard because you want to like build it up, and everybody's going to build up what they can do a little bit more than what it actually can do. At least today, you always kind of talking about what it can do in 6 months or 12 months from now. But I think just for a couple of reasons, I think they just want to know like what can you actually do, and then like I'll go into your documentation or I'll go into your demos pretty quickly, right? So don't like waste my time with like sugarcoating what you can do. Yeah, and just from like I experienced this a little bit more. This was, you know, leading some younger product marketers who I think were, uh, and this isn't like a generational thing. I think it's one of those things like if you're like not very far removed from the school and you're used to like almost having to like hit word counts and like, make your writing
Yeah.
more interesting. I think there's this like tendency to be like, oh, like if I don't put many words on a paper or slide or whatever it is on a messaging brief on a web page, like you know, it's not going to do the job. And I think that was one of the things. Just like no, like be direct, and you can almost do that internally too, right? Like you talk to any like if you're in a meeting or you have to write a memo for any like executive, like you think they want to read through all your jargon, they
Mhm.
don't, right? So not that different from that perspective as well. But yes, less is more. Remove the fluff, and then um, lean on your technical experts. I mean, it's good if you can do some of it yourself. There's some very technical product marketers out there. Find myself somewhere in the middle of relatively technical. I'm not a ex developer, but lean on them. And I just think, yeah, for sure, developers they'll cut through the BS. They like to question you. If you're in person talking to them, they'll kind of ask the questions to get to the point to where you can't any longer like answer their question right. They'll keep diving deeper and deeper, and it's good. It's good to be pushed, to be called out. Yeah,
One of the things I think people struggle with too is like to get there's still a component of marketing where there's some level of interest sparked. And so there's a if you're talking to an engineer or developer, you still need to get the value of the idea across quickly. And then if interested in that idea, then you have to go real deep. So would you agree with that? That there's a need with developers to they have to know what your product does and you have to explain it very simply and they have to see the value in it. At the point where they see the value in it, that's when you hit them with it. It's kind of like the sizzle and the steak idea. So it's like you got to give them the sizzle. Can't be overly verbose. But then once you get that, they're going to want to dive into the technical documentation.
I think it's a great point. I would almost say like we had this kind of issue last year with some of our events, and just like what tagline did we have at our booth and stuff like what, because we kept hearing people be like, oh, you have like with this long MongoDB is a developer data platform for your AI applications or something like, kind of mouthy. Then
What
it
do
was
you
like
do?
somebody, I think it was like a product manager was just like, MongoDB is a vector database and so much more. And it was just like very to
Right.
the point. And then this year was kind of like MongoDB is your like memory provider for agents, like just very direct. And it's kind of like, oh,
Right.
this is why you're here. And then like, now I'm ready to talk to you and let's go into the like lengthy one-on-one conversation and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, your point is totally right. And so, yeah, it's a little bit of spark and just like direct, like this is why we're here. And this is
Yeah.
why you
It's so
need it.
different than like a SaaS platform or something. It's just because you can stay at a high level with certain like let's say MarTech products or but when you start getting into the developer community, you gotta go really deep real fast, but they're not willing to spend any time on anything unless they know what you do. They're not
Yeah.
gonna look at the technical documentation until they figure it out. So it's just such a different animal. I wonder if the same thing of course, one of your main channels to market is your own salespeople. Like you've got salespeople that need to sell this forward. And I think at MongoDB you had like 2,000, was it a couple thousand
Roughly.
salespeople?
I mean, yeah, it was a pretty
Yeah,
large sales
a
force.
big sales organization. How do you how important are they in delivering the message? And then did you have any role in helping them understand how to talk to this developer community in a at least good enough way to they got interested in the product?
Yeah. Um, I would say that's probably arguably like the most challenging part of being a product marketer at a technical company is I mean, it's already hard enough to kind of be like, all right, I'm marketing to someone who's more technical, like effectively kind of knows my product better than I do because they like
Yeah.
work and live in it. But
No
then you're
pressure.
like, now I'm going through a salesperson who, and just naturally sales tends to turn over more than other roles, right? And so you're constantly having new people. So they have to learn the core of your product and what it does. They've maybe never worked in the technical space, database, data management, um, all these terms. And they too, right? Like I've been in these calls with relatively newer reps and it's, to be nerve wracking, talking to somebody very technical and trying to like have an educated conversation. And so it's a really fine line of like, how do I give them enough to like have their ears perk up when they hear certain keywords, and also the ability to then ask the right questions thereafter and get to the like root of what the developer's saying, and not trying to come off as like, an expert or someone who knows everything.
Sales engineer
Like,
or something.
yeah, just dangerous. And I think that's like, that's and I mean that's been true for when I worked at Dell and VRB as well. But I think MongoDB has been just like really tough. And I just, because we're in the data management space, very related to, when we acquired Voyage AI, an AI embedding company, it's like, all right, how do I now sell this? Right? Like, what are
Yeah.
embedding models? What's the differentiation between these and like the benchmarks and all this stuff? What does this benchmark acronym mean? And all this, and it's like, take a step back, right? And really like, to a degree, it's like less is more again. It's like all you need to know is like, these 3 points. And if they care at all about embeddings or like have these keywords. And so it's really trying to like simplify things as much as possible.
Yeah. Do you think there's an opportunity for specialized sales teams now that AI is a specific, thing? Is there a way to cordon off your sales organization to specialty because it can get so technical?
Yeah, I would say we've oscillated some doing that back and forth. And I definitely think there is, I think when something's new, that definitely helps. Almost kind of like, I've seen this around other, projects where we kind of call it a tiger team or something like that. It's like, we're going to give these people all focus on this thing to solve this problem over an determined amount of time, and they can say no to everything else, right? And kind of same with a certain group of sellers, right? It's like, let's get them hyper focused. We saw it a little bit more with what we'd call our solutions architects, technical pre-sales, whatever you want to call it. So it's like they can then go help out, with the account reps, the account executives, and things like that. I do think that's something that, when you just have all these different, yeah, we're like a core database, but then we have these like adjacent capabilities, and any company as they get bigger is just going to start having that. Like, yeah, it can help.
Yeah, especially with all the AI capabilities and acquisitions too. So in training people that maybe there's also the counter that AI is kind of everyone's job now. So you're still having to your core sales organization needs to learn it.
Well, that's where I say things have oscillated, because that's even within our product marketing team. It was like, do we have a core AI team, or does just everybody work on AI?
Yeah,
Right. So
it's just
yeah,
like anything. It goes back and forth in terms of SDRs reporting into marketing or do they report into sales? It's just the cycle of
yeah,
which management team do you have in place? And there's probably no right or wrong answer, but it just goes back and forth quite a bit.
yeah. I mean, I've been on product marketing teams who are in the, report up to product or report into marketing, and
Yeah,
and both in same companies, right?
and they can both work. It just depends on the leadership, really.
Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to transition a bit because I know you've. I think it's super interesting that you had this experience at Mongo, and then you've decided to take some time off. So it's kind of an intent. You called it an intentional career break to focus on some things that you wanted to do. So I think it would be helpful for other people that are maybe thinking about doing the same thing. What was the signal that told you that it was time to take some sort of reset? Because you did it once before when you went into the development side, which is so you already have a pattern of this, but what told you to do it this time?
Yeah. The first time too was also a little bit more, it was kind of before there was all this remote and hybrid work. And it was kind of a little bit more personal. It was
That's a
like,
bigger
we were living
deal.
in Austin, and then
Yeah.
my family wanted to, personal reasons, move to the Bay Area. And like, while I probably could have kept my job remote, it was kind of pre all that. So it was kind of like, also there was a, kind of a reason to also take time off at that point. But, I would say one thing, like, it had been about almost 2 years in the making, like 2, 3 years. Like, I think
Mm, mm.
I told my wife, my partner, like a couple years ago, like, hey, I think when I turn, calling out my age here, I was like, when I turn 40, like, I want to take some time off. And I just wanted to think about it, ahead of time, because I'm also cognizant too. Like, right now, there's a lot of people who, unfortunately, like, are not working, and it's not their choice, right? I've had many colleagues and people reach out to me similar situations, so I don't want to make light of the point of like, I'm extremely fortunate to kind of have this opportunity, and fortunate because of how great MongoDB had been to me in prior companies as well. But also, like, the more time you take to think about it ahead of time, you can also, get things like financial stuff in order as well and think about it. I was very fortunate enough, again, MongoDB, I had a career coach for a little bit as I was kind of like a growing leader. And I did end up, sharing this at one point. And what came out was like, a little tip. It's like, what are you going to do? And I was like, oh, yeah, I kind of want to paint. I kind of want to do this. I think I have some passion projects, but it was articulate very well. And it was maybe 2 or 3 sentences. And it's like, write a circle on it. Just get a letter size page, whatever. Put a circle with your name in it. Draw like, I don't know, just a bunch of lines coming out from it. And on every one of those lines, I don't know, 12, 13, 14, 15, write a sentence or two saying like, just write it in the first, I will be, for me, like painting, right? I will have a piece of art hanging on a gallery wall, um, in like, Carmel, California, something like that, right? Like maybe some of it like very lofty goals, some of it more just like, I will have a guitar, on a stand next to my desk and play it at least 3 days a week, things like that. Just all these kind of, goals. And some of them don't necessarily necessitate, leaving your job, but it's one of those things you kind of start to like, one, it got me to thinking past 2 or 3 items,
Yeah.
and so a couple of the other things I wanted to do, and I've been doing some. It's like I haven't had the time to actually play with a lot of these new, I call it play, say build with a lot of these new technologies like Lovable, Replit, others where you can just put in prompts and they build apps for you, right? And get back into the coding thing. So those were the couple of things I wrote down. It was like not just on the art side, but I want to do that. I was, for us where our kids are at, I was like, I want to be able to do drop off and pick up, you know, more easily and do things like that. And so, but being intentional about what you're going to do with your time. And so for me, it's partially a reset, but I think it's also to a degree an investment in some ways, because like I'm actually going to be able to spend more time uh, learning about the space. Whereas I felt like so much of my time, I can just, caught up in meetings and caught up what you're trying to actually accomplish. You're hitting your OKRs for a quarter, whatever it is. So it's for me, it's kind of twofold from that perspective, a little bit of a recharge, rebalance. Like, what is it that really matters to me? What interests me? I think too, anybody who might be in that situation might be thinking about leaving and has that fortunate enough to have that flexibility is, you know, is the company you're trying to work at or industry, whatever, is like the products interest you. It's like, is it a type of size of organization? One thing I've realized is like organization size does kind of matter to me. Like I kind of enjoy a little bit smaller to medium size and having a little bit more agency. And that's like totally cool. And that's a lot of people I've met. Like once my company gets to a certain size, I kind of go to another small one and I do that over and over. And I've met people recently who feel like, I think I want to like try a completely different industry and pivot and all these things and realize that you might have to take a step down or two, but you can be intentional about that somewhat beforehand. But yeah, I think too, if you're thinking about any of those pivots, talk to people in those industries as much as you can and network as well. And keep, I think, meeting you at that dinner, Kevin, that was like, I was lucky enough that, Jennifer, your partner at Mining True, reached out. We'd worked together when was at Dell and she was at Media. And, it was like, hey, let's, keep meeting people, keep finding what's interesting to others. You might not know what you'll learn and pique your interest. And so that was a few different things, from a very tactical, just write stuff down
Yeah,
on a
no,
piece of paper, to being intentional. But that's
think
kind of been my process. And yeah.
think that will be super helpful for a lot of people to hear. There's another process that I've been through. It's called a primary. You write down your primary aim, where you do a similar sort of thing. Like, here's the things I want to do, and here's the things I don't want to do in life. And you get them all written down, and you try to work towards a goal. Try to get towards those goals, and just something about writing them down makes it so much more real. And then you taking the couple of years to plan for it is really really smart. I think a lot of people that'll be very helpful to a lot of people to hear that. So thank you for sharing that. Very good stuff.
Yeah, and I think even when I kind of made the decision to do it like this year, I was still like a few months out. I mean, it
Yeah.
wasn't like 100%, but I had kind of already was like,
And you
so
kind of got to put yourself out there too if you do that. So it's the other thing is that I've learned is just forcing yourself to, even I'm an introvert, so forcing yourself as an introvert to just like put yourself out there and sort of work on serendipity as a goal, just things that happen that wouldn't have normally happened unless you just put the pebble in the stream and see what happened. So I think that's all really, really good advice. Well, it's so good to catch up with you and talk to you. Yeah, I think this was a fantastic, lot of good stuff. If there's anyone that wants to reach out to you, what's the best way they can get a hold of you to continue the conversation?
yeah, I would just say go on, David Macias on LinkedIn. I'm sure there's a few, but one who's been at MongoDB most recently. So
Cool.
yeah.
And is there anywhere your art's going to show up?
If you're in Austin, actually, I'm going to host the first weekend of Boston Studio Tour. So I
Awesome.
think it's like November 8th and 9th. I should know.
That's great. Where's it at?
I'm actually going to host it at my house. But you'll see the brochure if you go online and stuff. I'll be posting about it. But it's like anybody, like different studios can host and people can host. So I'm talking about putting yourself out there. I
Yeah.
told my family, and they're just like, really? And I was like, I mean, worst thing
Oh,
can
man, that
happen is
is
people
so
just be like,
great. That is so awesome. Okay, well, I'll have to put a link in the podcast if you have anything on it. Or not, when I see it on LinkedIn, I'll definitely promote it.
sure, thank you. Yeah.
Good stuff. Way to go, man. Okay, well, it's so good to talk to you, David. I hope to catch up with you soon.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, Kevin. This was fun. Thank you.
Okay, see you.